It's hour 2 of the show with Vince D'Addario, Sean Stiers. Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
If I unmuted myself, I would be absolutely ready for rapid fire.
I was wondering what the delay was all about.
And now I
didn't see
am.
your lips moving either.
I know. No, I was like, I know I'm muted, and so I need to get over there and unmute myself. So, because I've made that mistake with this new setup, Sean. If I don't mute myself during the commercials,
I know.
you don't know what's going out there.
Yep.
And that could potentially be a problem.
We're feeding multiple sources. We're feeding both the YouTube channel and the on-air over the airwaves. So
one of these days, I'm just going to stay on during a commercial and just answer questions or something. just chat with the people.
Might as well.
You know,
give it a shot.
Why not?
I can see it on your face. You're bored over there. You're just waiting for those breaks to end so we can get started again.
You know what I was doing, Sean?
What's that?
I was cutting the afternoon podcast up.
Oh,
I was working.
I thought you were counting the kids you were anticipating expelling this year.
It's a high number. I'm
sure.
Would have to take off my shoes and socks.
All right, fill in the blank. ESPN released a list of the 40 most important players in college football for 2025. It's blank. They have CJ Carr, number 4, behind Arch Manning, Ty Simpson, and Gunnar Stockton among their quarterbacks for title contenders going into the season.
It's surprising that Notre Dame is getting some love here, but at the same time, I get it. Like, it makes sense because they're not saying that he's better than those guys. Now, we can have that conversation at some point, but they're saying that he is the most important to Notre Dame's success if he is, in fact, the starter at Notre Dame. And obviously putting him in that number 4 slot, they're assuming that he is going to be the starter. But I agree with it. Like, there's a lot riding on CJ Carr if he's the starter as to whether Notre Dame is going to be good enough to be in the college football playoff. And if they are, they're important to college football. So, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. I'm a little, I'll just work it this way. It definitely makes sense because Notre Dame just went to the national championship game last year. And, we're going to touch on some rankings and stuff like that coming up here in a little bit. And like the biggest question mark they have is quarterback. It's only the most important position on the field for any team. So it makes sense that CJ Carr slots in there. Now, I'm a little surprised that there's maybe not like a CJ Carr / Kenny Minchie or, like CJ Carr or Kenny Minchie, whoever ends up winning the job, considering, like it is very presumptive that it is going to be CJ Carr. Let's not kid ourselves. A lot of people have worked under that presumption, I think, but there is a battle going on as of today, August 6th, 2025 at 6:09 p.m. We don't have, officially anyone named the starting quarterback. So I am a little surprised that they made that leap with CJ Carr right away since they don't have a definite starting quarterback just yet.
They don't. And I would venture to guess that the people in the football building are not very happy about that particular situation, that they're not including Kenny Minchie, because they are saying that there is a quarterback competition, which I agree with. And so, it's premature. I'll just say that it's premature. They should have had a slash there, and it should have just said, the Notre Dame starting quarterback still would have been true. It's still like that slot still would have made sense.
Whoever it is. Yeah.
But a slash would have been appropriate, I would say.
Yeah. Arch Manning, I think, makes sense. Gunnar Stockton obviously makes sense. I guess you can make a case for Ty Simpson, but I honestly just think that is largely based on Alabama's reputation as anything. We're assuming a team that lost 4 games last year with a new starting quarterback is now going to move itself into the conversation to be a title contender. I think that is maybe a little premature on Ty Simpson. I mean, if he plays like an All-American, obviously, then yeah.
Sure.
But
look, Alabama has proven that they don't need an elite quarterback to win a national championship. Now, I realize that was in the past, not the distant past, but it's in the past. But they haven't needed a dynamic, I shouldn't say they haven't needed. They have gotten away with not having a dynamic quarterback. So I don't think that it truly rests on that as to whether they're going to be a title contender. We've talked about Notre Dame being a quarterback away from being a title contender for a long time. And so that's why I think that is very appropriate that they're there.
Alabama also has a lot of quarterbacks starting in the NFL right now. When you think about it,
you're
you
not
got
wrong.
Bryce Young, you got Jalen Hurts, you got Tua. Like it's pretty good batting average.
3 QBs, yeah.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. It's blank that ESPN also has Irish cornerbacks Leonard Moore, quote unquote, and or Christian Gray at number 28 on their list. There is a slash.
So they're not afraid of the slash.
That's right.
They just didn't use it for the quarterback position.
Didn't use it for the quarterbacks. Yeah.
Which is a little funky, obviously, and I think that it is also accurate because of what this defense means to Notre Dame and what it means to their success moving forward. And, it's kind of a pick your poison, right? People picked on Christian Gray to their demise last year at times. Just ask USC and ask Penn State how that went for them. They got a little bit of success and then that was all taken away. So, I think they are arguably the best corner tandem in the country. So they belong on the list.
I do too. I think everyone is fully behind Leonard Moore after the year he had. And, like when you read the ESPN write-up, they mentioned the fact that, they lose. Notre Dame obviously lost a guy like Benjamin Morrison relatively early in the season, and Leonard Moore performed like he was Benjamin Morrison and then some. Look, there is the narrative that Christian Gray was up and down, hit and miss, whatever you want. Look, he got picked on by a specific opponent with a specific game plan for part of the game. Like, and I'm obviously talking about USC. It's not like Christian Gray was all over the map before that or really after that as well. Now, did he, in that national championship game, did he have, a major play? Yeah, he did. But he also went against the best wide receiver in the nation. And, he ultimately made a play. I'm not putting that on him. There's also a reason that Notre Dame is playing more zone defense and practicing more zone defense this year. And I think that would have been appropriate if they had the chance, to do that in that game. So I think this has got a chance to be the best cornerback duo in the country this season. And they've also got some young dudes who are, I don't want to say maybe necessarily breathing down their neck just yet, but they've got some guys who are coming here pretty quickly. They're all very impressive.
The entire second team is freshmen, if I'm not mistaken, right? At least what we saw when we were there on day one. The entire second team, all three corner, quote unquote, positions, the nickel included, were all freshmen, right? So, okay, let's go. A lot of youth in that room, a lot of youth and a lot of talent.
Yep. Interesting thing about this list that ESPN put out, they called it their top 40, list of the 40 most important players, but they also broke down, these are the most important players, in the, like in the ACC. These are the most important players in the Big 12 and so on. And so they kind of broke it down like that. So it skews the list, I think, a little bit. Are there any other Irish players who you would say most important for Notre Dame success this season?
I really thought hard about this one because I'm trying to think of a player that will be the make or break, quote unquote, of them being a title contender, which is the way I look at it to be on this list, right? Because it's importance to college football, not importance to Notre Dame, importance to college football. And I think they nailed it with the two position groups that were on there. It's quarterback and corner. I think that's absolutely accurate. I don't know that there's another position that Notre Dame would be truly devastated by if they went down. Like even Jeremiah Love, who's arguably the best player on the team, if he goes down, and I don't even like saying that out loud, we've just talked about the talent level in that running back room.
Yeah.
They would be probably okay. You know what I mean? Because you've got Jadarian Price, you've got Aeneas Williams, you've got Kedron Young, you've got all of those types of people. So I think they'd be okay. You know what I mean? So I couldn't really come up with a another position and really make a strong argument that they
Well,
are important to college football.
well, I would say for Notre Dame's success, I would say Malachi Fields and or Aiden Greathouse, like if we're doing duos, like with the cornerback, like
Okay.
at least one of those two guys is going to have to emerge in a big way. This offense with a first-time starting quarterback for this offense, because you don't have Riley. You're not going to have Riley Leonard runs to bail you out like last year, and you're not going to have that same luxury.
Yeah.
To some extent, you will because of the great offensive line you've got, and because of the great running backs you have. Like that allows them a little cushion, but they do start off the schedule with the two best teams that they're going to face as well. So like breaking in the new quarterback, you're going to need at least one of those receivers to be a legit go-to guy, I think, ultimately for Notre Dame to be a title contender this season. That's who I would put in
Fair
there.
enough. I'll take it.
Mark with a super chat in the YouTube. Thank you very much. He says, for some icy hot to help with the stretching.
Man,
that's appreciate, man.
I'm getting you.
I know we're really on the we've stayed on the stretching theme in this show today. I wanted to throw in one that Tommy Guns put in the YouTube chat earlier, since he thought we were doing mailbag show today. What would you guys say Marcus Freeman is batting as it pertains to hiring people throughout the staff? Now, Vince and I saw this before the show started, and if we're only going coaching staff, like none of these behind the scenes guys, because what do we know about any of those?
There's so many people that work behind the scenes. I couldn't even begin to tell you who they all are.
Keep it coaching staff, and maybe like the GM, that kind of thing, if you want to include that.
I think that's fair, and I would say that so far he's knocking it out of the park. I mean, there have been some questionable hires, I guess, at times. Chancey Stuckey, I think, would qualify under there. But I think that the staff as it is put together right now, I think is an excellent staff. I think the jury's still out on Chris Ash, and that's fair because we don't know what he's capable of doing in the regular season and once the season kicks off and all those kinds of things. But I think, the resume is good. What we're hearing is good. What we're seeing is good. So I would say that as of right now, I've been very impressed with his hires overall, and the current staff is in a really good place.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Marcus Freeman is batting at least 800, I think, with the hires that he has made. I mean, Deala McCullough, Al Golden, Brian Mason, and then, turning that into Marty Biaggi. And, there was some people who weren't sure about Al Washington. I think that has definitely swung in Marcus Freeman and Al Washington's favor. I think you're right. Like Chancey Stuckey is really the only, big black eye, black spot, whatever you want to.
Yeah, whatever analogy you want to use.
Yeah, exactly. That was obviously, one and done. I think some people probably think that Mike Brown still has, something to prove, or something to show. But at the same time, I think the recruiting chops have started to show, with what they've done in this most recent cycle. Justin says maybe Jared Parker. I think that's fair, but at the same time, they scored a lot of points.
Yeah, that's a big maybe for me, though. I think he got a lot of crap. Undeservedly so. Now, was he a perfect offensive coordinator? I'm not going to say that, but they did score a lot of points when he was calling the plays.
Yeah, scored a lot of points, and he became the head coach. So maybe, like it might not have looked perfect all the time. I think it was more because the roster was still in a place where it was, like between the recruiting, still trying to get there in some spots, and the fact that you did have to rely on a transfer portal quarterback, and the fact that Hartman, just with where he was, I feel like Sam Hartman probably reached his peak at Wake Forest in that slow mesh offense. And for a guy who had been around for a million years at that point, I think he reached his peak there. And we thought that maybe coming into this offense at Notre Dame, we were going to see another level, but it just kind of stayed flat. And, it was good enough for a successful season, not, ultimately not enough to put them over the top, but you bring in Riley Leonard and they put him over the top after Jared Parker took off. So, I think you're right with Chris Ash, though. Like, there's a very good chance, again, it's only practice and limited that we've been able to see. There's a good chance that maybe this defense is even better than last year's. And that's kind of a scary thought.
It's a very scary thought.
But we still have to see Chris Ash answer the bell
when
it comes to how he's calling things in an actual game, not on a practice field and, partial, practice viewing and all that kind of stuff. We've got to see what it looks like in a real game. There was Tommy had another question. In or out? Coach Mickens being as elite as he is he the second most important coach in terms of the development of the quarterbacks and receivers?
That's an interesting way to look at it because obviously those guys in the defensive backfield are going to be making the wide receivers work. And anything that the wide receivers get is going to be something that they earned. And we were able to at least see that when we saw some one-on-ones and things like that. It was kind of equal, to be honest with you, when it came to success for the defense, success for the offense. I'm going to have to agree with Tommy on this one. I'm in on it. I think that it's going to be very, very important with the play of the secondary and how they affect the play of the quarterbacks and receivers. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they are they're going up against a very good secondary every day. And I think that I think it's going to pay some dividends, if maybe there's a little bit more struggles, we had to go right to, well, what's practice for? You need to be able to learn to make mistakes. And, you need to be able to be willing to make mistakes in practice and all that kind of stuff. It's not just a cliche. We've talked about the fact that this is the longest and most athletic looking secondary that I can remember at Notre Dame. You probably have to go back to, Bobby Taylor and before that, 30 plus years, the last time, that you've seen the kind of dudes that they've got in the secondary right now. So yeah, I would probably be in on that as well. I think it's going to be good for both the receivers and the Notre Dame quarterbacks to be under the kind of duress that they are under on a daily basis before they ever get to Miami and Texas A&M and the rest of the schedule. Though, Vince, the preseason coaches poll released this week. And that started a little mini maelstrom earlier this week. Who do you think are the most overrated and underrated teams in the poll?
Ooh, man. So I think you asked this question differently than what you had put out there, I think.
Did I?
Well, I mean, I think it wasn't it who do you think is going to fall out or something like that?
No. That's part of it as well.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. That's the next
question.
one.
You might have
you're right.
ahead or yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I did skip ahead. So it's hard with the overrated, underrated because it kind of flows into that part of it, right? Because if they're overrated, I think they're going to fall out, right? So
I mean, we can do it. We can roll it all into one, because the other part of this question is, on average, there are 7 teams that will start in the top 25 that will not be in the top 25 at the end of the season. So that's by definition, the most overrated teams. So, the question there was, who do you think?
Yeah.
Who do you think fits that bill? So you can answer that one as well.
So I think it's easier to say teams that I think are going to fall out that may or may not be overrated, right? And I think that, look, IU's coming in at 19. I would not be surprised if they were on the outside looking into the top 25. I'm not saying that they're going to be the IU of old. I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me if they were out of the top 25.
Right. Hard to duplicate anything near what they had 2 years in a row. Now, at the same time, they have a very manageable schedule, once again, as we've said, as most of these Big Ten teams do, even though they keep wanting to tell us all how difficult the Big Ten schedule is. But is Indiana going to fall back to the mean, or will they even fall back to just being an average Indiana team? Because they have a lot of turnover from last year's team.
I mean, they have a tougher schedule than they did last year. Now, look, they're going to be 3-0 without much of a problem. But then, supposedly Illinois is really good this year, are going to be really good. They're going to go to Oregon. They've got to go to Penn State. So there's some battles in there that I think could be very interesting. And if they end up with 4 losses somehow, I think they could be on the outside looking in, depending on what the rest of the Big Ten is doing, right? So that's one of them. And they're starting at 19. So that's not that far to fall out. I think that it's very interesting to me, and I know you're high on this team. Arizona State at 11 to start off with is interesting to me.
I've got them as my underrated.
Yeah,
so you're going overrated.
Yeah, a little bit. I just think the Big 12 is just absolutely up for grabs. And what is that going to be an opportunity for Arizona State to repeat as Big 12 champs? Yeah, it's possible. I'm not ready to start crowning them and giving them the best ranking of every Big 12 team at this point.
Yeah, I think it's 17 returning starters they've got back. And again, like the most notable loss that they've got is Scadaboo, but they've got the quarterback back from a team that ended up winning the Big 12 and getting to the play. And when you've got like 17 of 21, that's a lot of guys. That's a lot of production coming back. I think you're right. The Big 12 should be fairly wide open, but I think that there's at least a little bit, in my mind, there's more of an underrated for Arizona State than overrated. Because I get, like we just talked about Indiana and the chances of duplicating it, doing it 2 years in a row.
Sure.
I think there's a better chance for the Sun Devils because of everything they've got back, while Indiana lost a ton. They lost almost as much, as ASU has coming back. So
Illinois would be another one that I think might be overrated. There's a lot of love for Illinois right now in the Big Ten and what they're going to be able to do. Right now they've got the 4th best Big Ten team right now in the rankings. Is that accurate? We'll see. I don't know. We'll see. But being ranked 12 in the preseason, that's a pretty high ranking for Illinois, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, and they've got to live up to that now. There are a lot of expectations, and what Illinois team has had the kind of expectations that this one has. Like Indiana didn't have those expectations. They got to fly under the radar until they got to Ohio State last year and ultimately made it into the playoffs. There's a lot more attention on Illinois than Indiana had last year.
My final overrated team, and this should be no shock to anyone who has followed this show in any way, shape, or form, the Irish Breakdown side of things. How in the world is Michigan at 14?
I agree.
I mean, oh my goodness. There is some serious projection going on having Michigan at 14. I mean, they're going to start a true freshman at quarterback. They were not good at football last year, regardless of the fact that they beat the national champs. I get that. But for some reason, Ohio State can't beat Michigan. So I don't know why. I don't know what. I'm still picking Ohio State this time around. But that's some serious projection for Michigan to be at 14.
Yeah.
Serious projection.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that at all. I had them on my list as well. I think it's interesting because Feinbaum says Alabama is underrated at number 8. I don't see it. 4 losses last year, 3 to SEC teams, including Vanderbilt. Now you've got a first-time starting quarterback. To me, like there are still some questions for Alabama. So I've got them slightly overrated at number 8.
You know who I think is slightly overrated? And I'm not saying that they're probably not even a top 10 team. I think Georgia at 4 is a little high. And they got 3 first-place votes, which is interesting to me. Look, part of this is because I saw them in person against Notre Dame, and I thought Notre Dame was the better team that day, and they maybe shouldn't have been. You know what I mean? You're down in Georgia's neck of the woods. Georgia shouldn't have lost that game. You know what I mean? Is Gunnar Stockton going to be able to, quote unquote, quarterback this team to an SEC championship? I mean, they're the second ranked SEC team behind Texas at number 1. Are they the second best SEC team? I don't know the answer to that. Maybe they are. I just feel like 4 might be a little lofty. Again, I think they're a top 10 team. I don't know if they're a top 4 team.
I am Tenzin says in the YouTube chat, still haven't mentioned OU. I mean, I'm assuming we're talking about Oklahoma. They're not ranked. They're
ranked.
just outside. Yeah, so like talk about them in which way. They're definitely not overrated. Are you saying that they're underrated? Because we've gone through this before. Oklahoma has a brutal end to the season. They might be better than last year bringing in Mateer, but I don't think their record is going to show it because of the schedule that they have to play. And that does end up kind of being part of this as well. And see if I can find the schedule to remind you here real quickly. It is like the last 5 or 6 weeks of the schedule for Oklahoma. Like if they can navigate that with only 2 or 3 losses, and again, I'm still stalling here as I try to pull it up, and my computer's not up right now. Here we go.
Okay, you got it.
Okay, so this is Oklahoma's now it's doing the jumps on me. 2, 4, 6. Here's their last 7 weeks. Texas, at South Carolina, Ole Miss, at Tennessee, at Alabama, Missouri, LSU. Now there are winnable games in there, but if they are 4-3 in that stretch, that'll be a good finish to the season, but that's not gonna keep you ranked at the end of the year. That's not going to get you anywhere close to the playoff at the end of the year.
Yep.
Because they have Michigan early in the season as well.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say.
We're both doing my pet peeve right now, where we both talk over each other and then then we wait.
I know.
I'm going to say this, and I found out yesterday that there is this guy who works in this building, young guy named Tyler, who I got done with the show, and I found out he was sitting in the other room trying to get tickets for the Kansas-Missouri game at Arrowhead Stadium in September. He's a Missouri guy.
Oh, no.
Anyone who knows me knows my history. I am a Kansas Jayhawk, a KU alum. I'll just say this. I'm not Kansas is not ranked going into the season. If Jalen Daniels stays healthy all year, Kansas will be in the running to be in the Big 12 championship game at the end of the season. I'll go out on that limb. If Jalen Daniels, who's been hurt each of the last 2 years, if he is healthy, they'll be in the running to be in the Big 12 championship game at the end of the year.
Okay.
That'll be
I like it.
All right. We got less than a minute. Finish this
Okay.
up.
Well, I'll be real quick then, because I don't need to be all that quick with it. I think Notre Dame is slightly underrated. I think I tooted the horn that Notre Dame was better than Penn State all last year. It never happened in the polls. They finally did it on the field. I still think they're better than Penn State. I also think they're better than Georgia. They should be above those 2 teams. So there you go.
Just sticking that in right at the end of the show when there's no time to respond to it. We'll have to pick this up on Friday when Vince is back for rapid fire. Happy anniversary to you and your wife, my friend.
You too. I
will talk to you later. That's going to do it. We've got South Bend Cubs baseball coming up next. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with irishbreakdown.com. We'll be back at 5 o'clock mañana. We will talk to you then.